Belleville Area District Library Board will come to order, and we will begin with the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now just have to take myself. Now, we are ready for a roll call, and I call on our able secretary.
Dawson.
Here.
Hughes Groves.
Here.
Tarika.
Here.
Peters.
Here, let's do it. Here. I'm sure, Chehavitz is late with excuse, and she'll be here shortly. The agenda, all have the agenda. You can look it over if anybody has changes, but right now I'll entertain a motion to approve it.
So moved.
Moved by Jariga and supported by Dawson, that the agenda be approved. Is there any discussion or any additions anybody needs to make? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by saying no. The agenda is approved. And then in your packet you had the October 10th minutes, which I'm trusting everybody has already looked at. We can consider those now, and I guess we could start out with a motion to approve them, and then we could talk if anybody has changes.
Very thorough. I move that to the sections.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's again moved by Jariga and seconded by Dawson that the minutes be approved. Does anybody have a correction? I agree, they are very thorough, and compliments to the secretary and her trusty director. That's good. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nay. I hear no nays, so the minutes are approved unanimously. And we are now to item 5 on the agenda, which is public comments. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment? Do you have anything you want to say?
Glad to be here.
Good. We're glad to have you here. In fact, glad to have you here too, Joy, to have it. And I'm glad we're moving along because the Spartans are playing the Duke Blue Devils tonight in basketball.
First and second.
And I really want to get home and see about the end of that. So think about that, everybody who has something to say. Item 6 is an interesting issue that our director brought to me and brought to us, and I think we all do need to consider it. And for this, I will turn to Director Sachi.
Okay. Our environmental testing company did find asbestos in the insulation in the attic of the.
We're talking about extended hours.
Number 6.
Number
Oh,
6
I agree
on
with
the
myself.
agenda.
Okay, just put that out.
That's right, Mr. Director.
I was trying to.
How did we ever, yeah, she was getting to the end of the agenda, so I could go
Okay,
home and watch better.
yes. I have been working with Michelle and Hillary. They both work on scheduling at our library for the checkout desk and the reference desk, and trying to figure out, we have added some extra staff this year for a variety of reasons, one of which was to help us out when we're doing all of this work on trying to plan for the new library. In addition to that, though, we have been contemplating opening 1 extra hour on Friday evenings and Saturday evenings. So we may open until 6 p.m. instead of 5 p.m. This is something that I think is very doable. It's a lot easier to slip that hour in on those 2 days than it would be to add any other time anywhere else to the schedule. So it involves a little bit of extra staff, but not overly much in order to make that work. So I'm
Right.
fairly confident we can absorb it within our current budget that you guys approved in June. And we'll continue to keep watch on the staff budget as well as the supply budget and utility budget. Those are probably the three that would be impacted the most by remaining open.
I think it's
The
really.
Friday hour especially, people would be very grateful for.
Yeah.
One of our busiest half hours at this library is between 4:30 and 5 on Friday.
Right, that way people could get out of work and maybe get by here and do whatever they have to do
Yes.
after
Same
work
with my
before it
branch.
closes.
So, but as far as being able to remember the schedule, I think it's easier to be able to tell everybody, 6 on Friday and Saturday.
Great,
Which is our
Right.
hours.
So that is my proposal to you.
and,
So it opens at,
Open at 10.
regular opening, do we need board action on this?
Yeah.
Or we're just informed?
I make a
Then
motion,
we
Madam
have-
Chair,
We have a motion from Jeriga.
I make a motion that we extend the hours on Friday and Saturday evening, 1 more hour, instead of 5 o'clock, close at 6 o'clock.
Has been moved by Jeriga and supported by,
No, she wants to. She's talking
supported
first.
by Hughes Brooks, that we extend an hour on Fridays and Saturdays, and if there is any discussion, this would be the time for it. Everybody thinks it's a good idea. So, there, it sounds like we have readiness to, yes.
And proposing we begin this in February.
Oh,
Then we
okay.
would get it in the newsletter.
So if I
during
come,
Love Your Library month.
Can we put this in the paper also,
Yes.
and also extend the idea that we are a warming center in case someone's power goes out and stuff like that?
well, that's a different point, but
Then-
we haven't voted
Okay, okay.
yet, we haven't voted yet. So let's vote on this item. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Aye.
Opposed by saying no. And it should be an item that we publicize, which we have a newsletter coming out too. We can put it in our own newsletter. We can work with the paper, and I'm glad to see Rosemary is here in time. We're on item 6, Rosemary, and we're extending an hour. And we can work with telling people, and so to implement by February, okay? Good, so I was gonna come and go. So if I come at 5:30 Friday evening this week, I'll be SOL.
Yeah, well,
Okay. So now we're on item 7, committee reports. This is interesting, the building committee group has been, not having to meet every week, but last week, our staff and our design team were busy and did a whole bunch of meetings without many board members involved. So we probably need some updates, and I'll let Joy start that out and go wherever she wants to with
I
it.
know nothing about any of those.
Well, yes, you do, yes, you do it. The design team has been keeping the building committee abreast with emails, and you have been reading the emails, as have the rest of the building committee. So you could say something and let Dan, or you could just let Dan.
Go for it, Dan.
Sure. Well, we haven't been meeting formally as a building committee, but that doesn't mean that we haven't been making great progress. So, as a design team, our team has been meeting with our consulting engineers as part of the natural ebb and flow of the design processes during the design development is where the engineers get more involved, and so we're starting to flesh through all of those things, and that information will become part of our final design development package. The engineering aspects of all of that probably won't have a whole lot of meaning to the building committee or the board in terms of the documents that we prepare, but they will have meaning to Matt and Matt when it comes time for them to do their design development level estimate. So there's been a lot of work happening in the background from that standpoint. We did have a design team meeting with the city on November 3rd, including Rick Rutherford, the building official, and their representative from Hennessy Engineers.
and also a representative from the fire chief, not the fire chief, but the fire marshal, Dave McNally. And it was a good meeting. The highlights of that meeting, though, is the chief in his comments to us that were provided at the planning commission meeting had asked for certain items. One of those was a standpipe system, which is not required by code, but he felt it was necessary through some back and forth emails and a phone conversation with David. I think we can handle that with what is going to be a manual standpipe. I don't know the exact cost of that, but it's going to be an incremental cost increase to the project.
What is its function? What does it do?
The fire chief's concern is that both the city of Belleville and Van Buren Township fire trucks may not carry enough hose. I don't understand the approach to firefighting, but so he's concerned that they're going to fight a fire, and the fire truck is going to park outside the building. They have to run hoses all the way up into the building, and he's concerned that they may not be able to reach all areas of the second floor of the building from a hose connected to the truck. Typically, what the building code doesn't require you to do this. So what a standpipe is the pipe located in the stairwell that actually has a fire department connection on it. So the firemen can physically carry the hose in with them, and at the landing of the stair, they can attach their hose there and fight the fire. The red flag that went off for us is we had the city or the library had through the city or independent testing company tested the pressure and flow of the existing water main and hydrants along Roy Street, and the pressure was kind of just barely adequate to support the fire suppression system. Actually, I don't understand this, but our mechanical engineer is telling us for whatever reason it's not adequate for our domestic water, so we're going to have a small little booster pump, I guess to flush toilets or something. I'm not really sure why. But it was okay for the fire suppression system. The real issue there is if the pressure is inadequate, then you have to provide a fire pump in order to be able to boost the pressure for the sprinklers. And if you provide a fire pump, then you have to provide emergency power, means an emergency generator in case the power ever went out. So it becomes a real snowball effect and really significant cost. So through talking with our engineers and back and forth, sounds like a manual standpipe doesn't factor into the calculations for a sprinkler system. And what they do with that is the fire truck connects to the building through the fire department connection and pressurizes the standpipe from the truck, but it saves them the hose line. In a true automatic fire suppression system with automatic standpipes, there's always pressure in that pipe. So you don't have to rely on the truck to pressurize the building. So it's really kind of technical, but that's kind of the rub of it. It's by code, and I've never had a fire chief ask for this, but it's hard to argue with, if he's saying they don't have that capability or he's concerned that they don't have it, then I think we do our best to try to. Well, as the authority having jurisdiction, he has the right to ask the library to do whatever he thinks is necessary. So that's kind of falling under that realm. If it comes back later that we are getting into a fire pump and an emergency generator cost for his request, I think we might want to go back and ask him if they can't find a way to deal with this another way.
It seemed to be that when I read what you said, it looked like that we were not at that point.
We're not at that point. In my
And
sort of
on the
default
other
ones.
kinds of things other than the fire, he's answered your question
Yes.
sufficiently,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the other thing is he wants a new hydrant, which we were kind of planning on. So then we got that squared away. The decision from the engineers, though, and Rick Rutherford is we can't eliminate the storm detention. So we have to provide the underground storm detention.
Can we reduce it?
No, they're basically saying we have to meet Wayne County standards, which is what it was designed, the design is meeting Wayne County standards.
What did Wayne County say?
Wayne County is not involved. Wayne County has no jurisdiction. The city of Belleville and their consulting engineers, as Hennessy, I guess, is the authority here. But the city of Belleville follows Wayne County standards. So they're using Wayne County as the rule, but the city of Belleville is, I guess, enforcing that. So at this point, we're proceeding with the underground detention as we had.
Which was what Beckett and Rather had worked on first.
Correct, yeah. Yeah, it just adds some significant cost, but it also adds some real, I think, constructability challenges, because we're basically doing some major excavation in what is the current parking lot of the library while we're trying to maintain ongoing operations for the library. So it's just, we're using up all of our site during construction, and there's not a lot of extra space to be sort of standing around. So it's
Do you
just going to
remember
be
what the cost was?
for the detention.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what the exact number. We were, I think, originally budgeting somewhere in the $250,000 line item. It's not an insignificant cost.
Do any of the
What I would like to see happen, because the building committee has not met in so long, I would really like to see some deeper consideration on all these. I'm in favor of Dan being able to talk so that the whole board is looking at this, but the kind of in-depth questions that people would be asking at the building committee, I think should be in a building committee. And perhaps it's time, now that we have had, there was the last time the building committee met, we needed to know what the city had to say, but rather than try and handle all the in-depth questions in this meeting,
Sure.
I think you might want to get us together as a building committee to talk about
Certainly.
that.
Then just to put a lid on the city meeting, the third item we had asked for consideration was the elimination of the rooftop equipment screen, and we're still waiting on a decision on that. So those are the three things. We are working to have our design development package complete the end of this month, and we can turn it over to O'Neill for their estimating aspect of that. That might suggest, and we can talk about this later, but it might suggest the building committee may want to meet maybe just after that, as far as a sort of a walkthrough of the final package, maybe the 4th or the 5th of December. And depending on your schedules and interest with vacation and holidays, we could even meet before then if you wanted to do more of a progress review. So that's for the building committee to talk about. And then the last thing related to the South Satellite project, we still need to sort of update our budget for that, but since the last time we met, we've traded some information back and forth with Joy and the township. And I did run some of our concerns past the mechanical engineer, and I think we've kind of confirmed that we do have some issues with the mechanical system that's going to require kind of a full replacement. So that's going to impact our overall scope. So
The mechanical system at Sumter,
yeah.
like the,
HV.
To bring it up to
So-
current, to bring it up to current code.
so whatever they did, didn't Sumter just put in something new?
My understanding is they just replaced the furnace unit, and I think in our analysis, I sent the information to the engineer, and he kind of confirmed my
That it won't.
hunch that it doesn't meet the issue is there's no fresh air ventilation coming into the building, which we need by code, and we also need combustion air. And the issue is when you bring in 0-degree air in the wintertime, we need a bigger furnace to heat that air, where right now it's just kind of circulating air inside
And
the
you
building.
did write up about that, did you say something about that, if we do all this too, it will address that noise issue or not?
That is a separate issue, but as we deal with that, I think we can address the noise issue, to make improvements. It's just, the whole thing is kind of snowballing is the thing about it, and so that's why we have to sort of
Yeah.
spend a little bit of time, maybe at the building committee, talking about, how much we can and want to put into that,
Right.
and how
I
it
think we
impacts
did
the
think
layout.
that the action that Sumter was taking might have been something that would benefit our efforts, but maybe not. They just had to keep it heated enough for their people who were in
Yeah.
it now, I guess.
And they actually, what they swapped out was existing, and they have 1, 2, maybe at most 3 or 4 people working out of that building,
Yeah,
so
part-time.
it's not a significant issue. But what we'll be doing is actually by code, changing the use of the building from basically an office use to a library use.
Assembly. Yeah.
And putting a lot more people in it, so the ventilation issue does become more of a real concern.
Other questions, it is a good opportunity for the full board to get a sense of these issues. Again, Dan is really up to his neck in all these issues, and the building committee really does spend a lot of, and Mary Jo, a lot of time on this. Mary Jo has the piece about the asbestos abatement over here on Charles Street that we have to talk about in this report as well. Do you want to do that now and then, or are there questions of what Dan has just presented that anybody wants to cover further?
I just want to add an addendum that I did leave message with Esther about if there had been any progress with the agreement, and I have not heard back yet.
Okay, I know you had been trying, the last couple of weeks you've been trying to get some back from her, right?
Well, I did get that one, where they had their inspectors look over the building,
Uh-huh.
but things that it's as if they did not look at it as the changed use.
I think so, yeah. If you look at it as an existing building,
I
then
see.
you would say, you could argue it's fine, you don't need to address it, but once we change use, I think it triggers it from a different code perspective.
Right.
You know.
I get it. Okay, are we ready to talk about asbestos in the H&B building?
Okay. There is asbestos in the insulation next door that needs to be removed. Our environmental company, testing company, solicited bids on our behalf, and they received 3 bids. And in your board pack is a list of those 3. Sloan Environmental Services, Global Green Service Group, and Environmental Maintenance Engineers. ETC has worked with all 3 of these companies, and they all come recommended. The lowest bid is $7,900.
Mary Jo, is that the only thing that they were?
That's all that needs to happen in order, this needs to happen before we can demolish it.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, as far as they can see.
So the vermiculite's not an issue.
No, that is
That
the
is-
Vermiculite and the asbestos are together.
Oh.
That's where they were mined
Okay.
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
vermiculite is asbestos, sort of.
In this case it is, but present day vermiculite comes from a different mine,
Right.
and it doesn't have asbestos in it.
Oh.
Good,
And
because I stick my hands in it all the time.
1990 was banned from this mine. in
Oh.
Minnesota.
Okay.
So, clearly there's 3 bids, and clearly one is lower than the others.
Any reason why there's like about $5,000 discrepancy between the low and the high?
Yeah.
So you want to know what the difference is?
Yeah.
Why?
Why such a big difference?
There's a local company that wants, which is much, much larger, they want a lot more money. So, in this case, just to get rid of it, all they're gonna do is wet it down and take it out. they
What-
want, he does.
What
The
she's
difference,
asking, is there a significant difference in the?
I understand that.
Yeah.
But
That's
what
no.
you're saying is that in this case, the low bid would do just as good a
Yeah,
job.
exactly.
as-
The
I'm
area,
not saying it wouldn't, John, I'm just asking if there's a reason that there's a $5,000 difference between the two.
some companies are busier than others and they can jack their price up because
Okay.
maybe they didn't wanna do it.
Okay,
it's
And-
probably
and-
market
and
forces.
ETC basically, they recommended all three, they didn't have an issue.
okay.
Nothing stuck out to them like this is a bad.
So maybe a better question would be, is there any reason we shouldn't take the low bid?
No.
I make a motion that we hire Sloan Environmental Services to take out the asbestos.
I'll second it.
It has been moved by Chehevitz and seconded by Stoudemire that the Sloan Environmental Services be contracted to do help with our demolition issues.
Yeah, Mary Jo,
Yes.
did you notice the bottom here? Do you
Yeah.
need the
There's
board
like
to
an additional
address that as well?
$800. Yes,
Yeah.
so it'd be 8,700 total.
Yeah, that would be with anybody, with,
Right.
no matter who
Okay.
you chose. So are there other comments or questions or discussion before we vote on this?
Just an observation that ETC will also be on site when this is removed in order to do air testing. And it's probably be about $400 a day, and they're estimating it'll be a 2-day project,
When will they do it?
as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So with that, it's all the better for us to go ahead and act on our motion. Anybody else have, no, we left 2-0, okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by saying no. The unanimous vote for Sloan Environmental Services to handle the asbestos abatement issues at 360 Charles Street. Other items for building?
In anticipation of them acting quickly on this project, we are trying, O'Neill Construction is trying to actually put together bid solicitation in order to demolish the property. Still trying to get that done this year if possible, depending on weather. That's going to require some kind of approval. I don't know if you guys wanted to have a special board meeting or if you wanted to empower the building committee to meet and do that.
I have my opinion, but I will entertain any
To
opinion by
approve the
people
bids
not on the
that we
building.
get, is that what you're talking about?
To award the bid once O'Neill gets it.
This is, we just voted on one of the bigger things we have to do before the demolition, but in order to actually take care of the demolition, if we can do it before the end of, before the
Yeah.
winter sets in, we're asking to be able to move quickly.
I wanna just throw out there that I am, getting knee surgery tomorrow, and, no, not tomorrow,
Well,
I'm
you
sorry,
have to
Thursday.
cancel.
Thursday.
Right,
So,
but we can come to the hospital and have our
it's like about 3 to 4 weeks that I can't drive, so
Can we do this on conference call?
mercy of
We
my
will.
husband,
We'll come and pick you up.
come and get me.
Yeah.
Not the, and I probably
For
shouldn't
how
do
long?
it the first week or 10 days, because I'll be on opioids. They say you
Don't
should
drive
make
any heavy
major
equipment.
decisions during that time.
We're talking after Thanksgiving. Is there a possibility that anything would need to be done about this before Thanksgiving? Really? Okay. Then the second question is, our meeting isn't until December something. So would the board members who do not usually, I'd like to hear from the board members who don't usually attend the building committee, if they have comfort with the building committee handling this, should we be able to do this sometime before the 12th of December, which is the next time we're scheduled to all be back together.
What is the estimated cost, you know, at least the range of the cost of the demolition?
I don't, Matt has not given us that estimate. Actually, I brought my budget. Off the top of my head, I want to say we're probably looking at something that's in the neighborhood of 12 to 18,000,
Okay.
maybe not even that
That's
much.
realistic.
Yeah.
That's kind of the, it's kind of a
The
house.
way it costs half as much as demolishing to get the asbestos out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that asbestos is really expensive to be.
But budget-wise, you know, we had allocated, what you spent to date on hazardous materials is about half of what we budgeted, so I think you're okay
Good.
thus far. We still have some things to do with here. Well, we had budgeted, this is subject to Matt and Matt with their greater expertise, but in the bond issue budget, we had budgeted $24,000 for the HMB demolition and site paving removals. So it would probably be less than that because I think the plan is to not remove the existing parking lot, but they can use that for temporary parking, so
Good.
it's probably the building. So
Yeah, quite
maybe
a bit of
15, maybe 18, roughly.
that- Quite a bit of that property is already in the lot.
Building committee making a decision.
Is that a motion?
Oh, I motion that we allow the building committee to make the decision with regard to the demolition of the HVAC.
I would second that.
So it's been moved by Stonemeyer and supported by Jariga that the board empowers the building committee to approve the final demolition proposal for the H&B property in the hopes that that takes place prior to our next meeting. All right, any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed by saying no.
When will these bids be going out?
Well, I'm hoping to talk to ETC tomorrow and see, and get
Yeah.
some
As soon as I
going.
get that,
And
yeah.
once we know that, I'm actually going to, in addition to however they're going to post it, we're gonna put a bid, notice in the Independent. When is your deadline this week for next week's paper?
For next week?
Yeah.
We're going to press early, so Monday noon.
Monday at noon, okay.
Does O'Neill seek bids for us for that?
They're orchestrating that.
Okay, good.
Good. It sounds like we have, so, and in what we've said and what Joy has shared about what she has to do, it is unlikely we'd be doing any kind of building committee until after Thanksgiving,
Well,
correct?
I don't wanna stop the building from making
Well,
progress.
On
Can we do this on a conference call? I'm serious.
like if
I
we,
think, I don't know about
No,
board
Why
meetings, you
not?
can't, but
you can't.
it's code.
you could do the building committee with,
You
Joy,
could do the building committee, but for this type of a thing, I don't think you can.
It's not legal to do
I
that?
don't think so.
I think we could have the meeting.
Have you ever seen the city
I will
council
try to
or the
be there.
trustees? or
And
the-
we'll take care of your transportation, and we're not talking about doing it like within, right?
Your surgery's Thursday, we can do it Friday morning.
We'll come to the hospital.
What time did she
No,
get
I
home?
should be able to walk right in. I think they have to go to physical therapy and stuff, so.
That's gonna
Yeah.
be your pain in the butt,
Yeah, so,
poor thing.
yeah.
So, I'm just looking at that before we move off of building committee, just so that people on the building committee can get a sense of when it is we need to meet again. We do need to meet just for update, just to go in more depth to the issues that Dan has just talked to us about, but since we will also need to meet about this demolition thing, doesn't it seem to make sense that the building committee meets sometime? And next week, it's a holiday week, and if you're, so after Thanksgiving, does that make sense?
Yeah, because you're not gonna have bids from O'Neill before then.
No, I wouldn't think so. We gotta get the asbestos thing done, and, yeah. So that's kind of a ballpark time frame, and we'll work on the details of when the meeting might take place, but we might be looking at the week of November 20th. No, I'm sorry, November 27th. Okay. So everybody is forewarned. And anybody who's not, it'll be a public meeting, so anybody who's not on the building committee and wants to come, we'd love to have you. Anything more on building? Good. Bylaws.
I have nothing.
Good. Finance.
I don't have anything, although I will make sure to register on the contingency account.
Speak up.
Oh, yeah,
What
contingency
did you
account,
say?
yeah, we're gonna talk about the contingency account.
Okay. Good. Okay, that, good, finance.
And I have to sign checks too, so.
Okay.
Okay. Marketing.
Nothing to report.
Okay. Personnel has something to do here.
So, the personnel committee did meet on October 27th, and we just made a few revisions to the director evaluation form because it's that time of the year to give our wonderful director an evaluation. I know that they were, the forms were sent to you via email, but these are hard copies.
You want a hard copy?
You want a hard copy? So one of the things that we did is that we separated out the instructions in the form, because when you looked at the form before and you saw the instructions, it was kind of like, wow, this is gonna be a lot of work. So we just really kind of streamlined the process.
Oh, I see, these are each.
Yeah, to make it simpler, to get it done.
Thank you.
Oh my God.
I'd like to. Yeah, and so
I already have.
if at all possible, if we can get these back, you can bring them back to the library, just put them in an envelope with my name on it. By December 1st, that would be wonderful. Joy?
I'll email it to you.
Thank you. Wonderful. Email it or just bring a hard copy to the library, and I'll pick them up from here so that we can have the evaluations completed and discuss it at our next board meeting, which is December 12th, I believe.
Correct. No, December 10th, what did I just look at?
It's on the bottom of this, it says
Well,
December
It
12th.
is.
December 12th, right.
It's the 12th.
Thank you,
Just
Julie.
like you said.
Thank you, George. Has me second guessing myself. And I just want to say thank you to Tanya and Mary Jo. We had a really productive meeting, and Mary Jo has worked so hard to help with the revisions and get the form out, so I really appreciate that. If you have any
Great.
questions, feel free to email or contact me.
And it's very good work, and it's a lot of work too, so on behalf of the board, we thank the personnel committee for doing this, and we as board members need to address and fill out these forms, give our attention to these forms. As we're talking about this, I also want to emphasize, I turned in to Mary Jo that audit form. It's such a strange little form, but it's required. And I'm hoping many of you probably have already finished it up. Those of you who have not yet, please do that one as well.
And for those of you who have not filled it out, or if you've already sent it on, then ignore it. I put it in your board packs, a copy of the survey, so. You can send it directly to the auditor, or if you want, you can give it to me and I'll send it to him.
I did my homework.
You get extra points.
Start on your forehead.
Yeah,
Gold stuff.
I have a feeling
Gold
we've been
stars.
used to filling that darn thing out every year. So, good, we're moving right along down our list of pieces, but we have really some substantive committee work that's also been done in the policy committee, so now, unless there's anything else, Michelle?
That is all.
Okay, then we move to the policy committee and Mary Jane.
Okay, so I'm sure all of you have had time to memorize all three policies, right? Okay. I'm hoping that you've all read them. If you have questions, because I'm not gonna go through and read them, but, we split it up into three different things, one for the members, the composition of the committee, and then one for temporary and one for permanent. It just seemed to make a whole lot more sense and it was less mind-boggling.
Yes.
I really like that you did
I
that.
like that too.
If you have questions, comments, whatever.
I have a comment. I wanted to thank the policy committee for this, but I also wanted to make sure that the board is well aware, and many of you are, that we have also begun to engage with the wider community on this art issue, and we had a preliminary meeting prior to the policy that was really well attended. We got some very good input, which I think the policy committee went back, and part of the reason that Mary Jane changed this the way that she did was for that. It could be very helpful if we were able to, even if we don't do everything tonight with all three of these policies, if we were able to move forward with the member policy and have a sense of the constitution and charge of the art committee, it could be helpful since we have reached out to those folks again, and it would be very good to, by the time they come together, to have a structure that we've agreed to for them to move forward. They might want to have some input to us, they might have some useful input. We did, as was in the motion from John last time, we did pretty widely circulate the policy that we looked at last month. And we asked people for input, and we put on the cover letter that tonight was the night we'd be looking at it. I haven't gotten a lot of feedback from people. Did you get it from anybody else, Mary
The
Jane?
only person I heard from directly was Michelle Mentor, and her concern was that we weren't gonna have any permanent art. And I said, that has not been ruled out. She was going more by the minutes, I think, of that interaction that we had last month. So.
And then we had some input from Marty Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
So we have had some input from outside, and we might get some more that would pertain to some of to the other two policies, but I was wondering if I'm putting in a word for us to maybe look at this first one and see if we can't at least get moving with that. And again, the policy committee, the work that the committee did, and I was able to attend the committee meeting, that was good, but also Mary Jane and Mary Jo did a lot of work after that to be able to come up with what you have before you, and I really do think it makes things easier.
We edit Ypsilanti, they had at one point made like postcards out of their art collection that, they sold them for $10 because they have a lot of art in there.
Mhm.
And now we were in the process of redoing our website, and for each significant piece of art, they were putting some information about it and sort of having the art on a gallery on our website. So, I make a motion to approve both art policies.
There's three.
There's three, are you thinking of all three or?
Three.
I'm missing one.
There's the members, the temporary, and the permanent.
There's art acquisition, permanent art acquisition, temporary art exhibits and displays, and art committee members. Do you have all three?
I don't have the art committee members, but I saw it online.
Here, is this it?
No, that's the,
Nope. I wonder where those ones.
We're having
Oh,
another
here it is.
meeting.
Here it is. Because we're having another meeting with the arts people tomorrow night, and so if the members want, if the members want us at least put forth, but it's up to the wishes of the
Oh,
board.
is the meeting tomorrow possibly gonna change it?
That's where I'm coming from.
Oh.
Because Doug Peters is a gifted attorney and artist, and he may have some changes.
Has he seen this at all?
Well, you know, let me just say this. It's great to get input, but if we come together every month and then we wait for the next group, we're never gonna get anything done.
But if it's a significant idea,
Okay, let me finish. So if things come up during the meeting that we have tomorrow that people think the committee who's sitting there votes on and thinks that should come back to the board to alter the policy, that can be done. But if we go month to month and a different person every month says, well, I think you should do it this way, or I don't think you should be doing that, we're not gonna have any policy.
yeah, okay.
Do you see what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
I hear you.
I really can understand what Mary Jane is saying, and I feel for that. That's why I really want to see at least this first one, and I certainly don't want to see a situation like that.
I don't think
on
that there's
and on.
anything in these policies that Doug Peters is gonna have an issue with, and there are policies to make anyway.
Okay.
So I will revise my proposal and my motions, propose that we accept all three.
I'll second that one.
So it has been moved by Chahavitz and seconded by Dorita that the three policies on art, the art committee members policy, the policy for permanent art acquisition and art display, and the policy for temporary art exhibits and displays be adopted.
I have a question.
There is a question.
So, under the temporary art exhibits, item number 4B says it is the responsibility of the artist to ensure works of value. Is that typical or is that unusual? I didn't
For
know.
the temporary ones, that's what we found in the different policies that other libraries
Okay,
have.
so that's typical, okay.
Because the library doesn't actually own it. Now, if the library owned it, if it was a permanent piece, then the library would have to take responsibility for it.
And that was one of the things that I remember Doug Peters mentioning, the man that John was referencing is an artist and an attorney, and his cautions about what we looked at, remember last month, was about permanent acquisition, and he cautioned that then we would be in the business of having to insure a lot of art, and that what we should look at is temporary and loans, and that it's a responsibility of
And
the
that people get tired of certain things. you know.
May I ask, or just add an observation, question? Did the committee talk about the definition between permanent and temporary when one policy applies versus the other?
If we acquire it, that's my interpretation of permanent.
Well, that may be fine, but the policy for permanent, and I think it would be intended this way, but under 5 general conditions, so as opposed by a donor, lender, or seller. So I think there are instances where a person who owns art may lend it permanently to a museum or whatnot, where it's in their permanent collection, but they still have the ownership rights. So that you might think about whether if that's intended here, or if you would, anything that the library doesn't own outright, you consider that temporary.
Did we not say something about loans? Is it, I know we talked about it, but are loans not specifically
I think it's pretty common for people to loan art to museums, but
And that would be
almost give it to
temporary.
them
And that
permanently, but
was,
they retain
that
it.
was a question that came up to us in our full discussion about what we do about loans, and I thought that that was in what we had.
I think that the word lender in there is probably, should not be there, since that would not be a permanent piece of art. If it's lent, it should be a temporary piece of art.
Well,
It's not the sole
but I
property of
thought
the
in
library.
the temporary,
which
we
is-
said that works, temporary exhibits are loan.
I didn't want
I
to steer you
thought-
off track, it might just, just so the committee knows when to enforce which policy. it might-
And I'm not sorry you brought it up, because I almost think we should be explicit about loans.
The very first line,
Which one are you on?
permanent,
Permanent.
that it shall become the sole property of the library and not encumbered or restricted in any way.
That,
That should be the
that may give you the
definition.
definition.
Yeah.
So then you wouldn't wanna talk about lender, but you would wanna talk about lender or loans in the temporary, which I thought we had done, but I don't
It's-
see it.
It's there.
It is there?
Yeah.
Where am I not seeing it? Where is it?
It's
Sorry.
under 502.
Well, basically,
Oh, I see. That's in
it's in the
same
top
thing.
one again,
Yeah.
not
It's
the
the
acquisition.
same
Works of art may be chosen for the library's temporary exhibits and or displays.
Yeah,
Which
and then this lender.
Specifically denotes it's not permanent.
And this,
We don't own it, and we don't have to insure
and
it.
then the general conditions, you do have that lender language.
You might just strike that word,
That
Yeah.
word in the permanent.
That's
under
just
item
that's
5,
confusing.
and then there's no question.
Okay.
Okay, so temporary, take out lender or permanent.
No,
take out
permanent.
permanent.
In the
yeah.
permanent, take out, general conditions, take out
Because
lender.
it wouldn't be lent to us if it's permanent.
Okay, you're gonna have to redo the thing.
That's 5A, this, you just take out lender. But you would leave it in 5A of the temporary policy.
You have to redo the motion.
I was supposed to say, how do you do your motion? Because-
Well, well, you take a friendly amendment to the motion. The motion was, Tanya, didn't you make this motion?
No.
No, Joy made the
I
motion.
revise my motion to modify the draft policy for permanent art acquisition, section 5A, and strike lender from that, the word lender from that section.
Okay.
Good.
Under committee member policy, the BADL, our committee will be comprised of 7 individuals, correct? All of these are chosen, or 5 of them are chosen by organizations. The question I have, the 2 artists, who chooses those? We, who?
Board.
Does
I
it say
thought we
that?
put that in there.
Huh?
I
It
thought,
says,
Mary Jo, I thought we put that in there.
I thought we put that the board, the
No,
chair.
it was
No,
that, it was
They're
that
all represented by different organizations. They
BACA
choose,
picks their person,
Yes,
the
I
Friends
understand
picks,
that.
okay.
other,
The director picks the 2 trustees,
the direct, yes.
the director and the
Yeah,
chair.
yeah.
Okay.
It's
Pick the
clear.
pick the 2 trustees, the 2 artists. That's it.
The director picks the 2 artists.
The director and the chair of the board picks the 2 trustees
Is that
to serve.
stated?
You know, that might have been enough, I heard it.
Okay,
I thought it was too.
Fine.
That's what I said. I think it didn't get into this.
okay.
So we
Okay.
need another amendment maybe. That's why we need to look at things. Because that was our intention, that it would be the board, that it would be us. The
Okay.
board would be the ones to pick the artists.
So then
Okay,
just
it's going
and
to
2
say
chosen by
artists
the
and trustees.
BADL.
Will be selected. Yes, selected.
And so you and 2 artists,
Artists, 2 artists and 2 trustees, I'm gonna have to say 2, because we already know there's 2 of each, will be selected by the director and the chair of the board of trustees. Right?
That was what we had talked about, but it's for the
When we
board
were
to decide
deleting
now.
stuff to tighten it up, we must have deleted that. Okay, so,
So that's another friendly amendment.
okay, so I just want to go over this part one more time. So number 1 will be voting members' terms of service will be staggered on a 3-year rotating schedule, except for the director. Number 2 will be what it is right now. Number 3 will be artists, and the artists and trustees will be selected by the director and the chair of the BADL Board of Trustees. And number 4 will be the offices of chair, vice chair, secretary, yada, yada, yada. Okay?
So you're putting in a new item 3.
Mm-hmm.
And renumber.
And I will email all of you the update of whatever we changed tonight.
I was trying to see if that was in the first form that you emailed us.
It was, I didn't bring that folder with me.
Finding it in there.
Because remember, we had 6 things there, Mary Jo, and that thing. Remember we
Well,
typed it up?
remember we talked about how we picked those. But that's why it's always good to look these over when we do this, so that we can get it straight.
Okay, you want to modify your motion again?
I don't know if I can do it.
Can you just read that paragraph? I was trying to put the
Which one?
changes in, the changes for the 2 artists.
So I think where she's putting it is here. She's putting something in here. I think she's leaving, you're not changing this second paragraph,
I'm putting what we
Battle
just
Art
talked about
Committee.
as number 3, and the current number 3 is going to be 4.
so this still says who's gonna be on the committee.
Okay.
The item 3 here will say who chooses them.
When did you send it?
She sent it a
Like 5 days
couple
ago.
days ago.
Right.
Board of Trust.
Actually, it's going to say, no, because it's better grammar, the director and the chair of the Board of Trustees will select the artists and trustees.
Are we clear in here that the one BACA member will be chosen by BACA and the one Friends member will be chosen by Friends?
Do you want me to stick that in?
I want it to be clear
Okay.
that it's not just we're gonna march into the Friends and say we're picking this person and march into the BACA and say we're picking that person.
Okay, so number 4 will be, no, number 3. Number 3 will be the director and the chair will select the artists and the trustees. Number 4 will be,
Can't we just put another sentence in there and say BACA will
You want-
choose
you
the
don't want me
BACA
to separate
person
it.
and Friends?
okay.
So that
The
no-
BACA representative will be selected by BACA and the Friends representative will be selected by the Friends.
therefore, that number 3 will determine how the people are selected.
Right,
That seems to make sense to me.
okay. Good thing you didn't modify it.
Yeah, that's why she said she didn't want to have to say it, because we know it's been changed.
Hmm?
So, who was the seconder of that motion?
I don't remember.
You.
John.
John. So there are 2 updates to the motion, and I'm pretty clear what they are, but to,
Do you want me to read them?
You need to read them.
what would you please do that for us?
Okay. The update that will be number 3 is the director and the chair of the BADL Board of Trustees will select the artist and trustee. Period. The next sentence, but the same number, will be representatives of BACA will be selected by BACA. Representative from the Friends will be selected by the Friends. And then number 4 will be the offices of chair, vice chair, whatever.
Right.
Okay?
So it's just a new item 3. And then the other amendment is the
And take out the word lender. and the other one.
omission of the word lender in the permanent acquisition, which, thank you, Dan. It is good, many eyes catch many things. So, any other comments before we take our vote?
Is there any indication of when the meetings are? How
That's
many?
gonna be up to the
That'll
committee.
be up to
Okay.
the committee.
And if someone misses how many meetings, they're asked to, they disqualified?
I don't think that's.
You gotta
up to
take
us.
ownership, huh?
We're not putting that
Okay,
in here.
all right, fine.
We want to let that committee have some sense, and this can be changed, the
Okay,
committee
fine.
works on it, and
I
they want to
understand.
do things differently. But I think at least this gives an idea of what we want,
Sure.
it's hard to keep pulling a group together, and then we're not able to
Right.
tell them what it is we want. So, we have a motion that has been duly made, amended, and supported. And we've had discussion, and I think there's readiness for a vote, hearing. I'm not hearing any other questions, so all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Can I just say amen?
We have ayes and 1 amen. All those opposed, signify by saying no. The motion to approve these 3 policies has been approved with no dissenting votes.
And thank you for your eyes, your ears, and your comments. Because I would have been ticked off if I had found this out later. So thank you.
And thank you for all your work,
Yeah.
especially Mary Jane, Mary Jo as well, and Alma as well.
And it's very nice to have a committee that's been doing this kind of selection of work. I don't think that typically happens.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, just before we leave, I think the other thing is that this members policy, the art committee members policy covers fundraising, which we are thinking may be a broader group of people than just the voting members of the art board. And so it will be a mechanism for community engagement with our efforts. And I think that's one of the most important things to be done with this. So I'm really happy that we are moving along with this. So on that, I am also very happy that we're finished with committee reports. We are on to item 8, approval of accounts payable.
Make a motion to approve accounts payable as presented.
It is moved by Dawson and supported by Stoudemire that the accounts payable be approved. And are there any questions in there? And I really like having our treasurer be one of the support to that motion. Joan Puff, that Joan Puff, that was one of the, she did a program, right? Joanne Puff. Yes. Yeah. Any questions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed by saying no. The ayes have it, no dissenting votes. Item 9, our director's report.
Okay, we've already covered a couple of things already. I think I had put in here about proposing the new hours, so thank you for that. I think since our last meeting, we've had our Harvest Fest. And Dan and his guys came out the day before Harvest Fest and outlined the footprint of the building and on the street. So if you haven't seen that yet, it's in orange.
Still there.
It's still there, so a lot of people have, during Harvest Fest, were able to look at that and enjoy that.
People have been seeming to have fun, and Rosemary printed my little letter encouraging people to come look at those orange lines.
We do have a sign on order to place in the sidewalk area that indicates that that's where the new library is going to be built, so that's a work in progress. The audit is underway right now, and in looking at our accountant's initial numbers, it looks like we are doing well. We are received more revenue than we had budgeted for and had fewer expenditures than we had budgeted for, so that's always my goal, to be a little bit cautious. So it looks like we're going to be okay on our audit. The Winterfest is coming up very, very soon, December 2nd, I believe?
Yeah.
Okay, and we will be marching in the parade, so I will probably send an email out to the board to ask if anyone would like to help us march. It's always kind of a usually cold event, but fun.
December 2nd.
December
Yeah.
2nd.
And you do your cart
Alright.
decoration.
Cart
We might do
dance.
the book truck brigade again, although we might actually borrow something from the Ypsilanti District Library.
Get some batteries. But
Okay.
yeah, and get it back for my daughter.
It's to be determined. We might have a little bit of something different this year. So.
What's the theme this year? I forgot.
It's Christmas magic.
What day is the parade?
Saturday?
December
Saturday.
2nd.
December 7th.
First,
Second.
Second.
Oh, really?
First Saturday and.
That's just 2 weeks, or a little over 2 weeks.
It's Saturday.
Approximate time.
Will you be able to walk by then?
It's
Judy?
Probably won't be.
Steps up at 6.
Slow you guys down.
5:30.
It's
Well, I usually go, but.
I'd be
slow
willing to
you up.
wheel you.
You gotta wheel fast in that
We'll
parade.
make a little bookmobile for you to sit up.
A little what?
A little bookmobile.
I will probably be able to go to that. I have a soup kitchen to do in the morning, but I'll be able to, it's a evening parade, so I could do that. And plus, it's a fun thing for the city. So good.
And I left you a fun article to read.
Yeah,
From that library
it's
notes.
crazy stuff.
Any questions?
Any questions of our director?
No. Thank you
Um,
for going to all the meetings.
Yeah, well, thank you and Dan and because the real work on our building in the last couple of weeks has been with the
We've got a couple of
staff.
staff meetings,
The
specifically on the
staff
staff areas of the building and
Yeah.
layouts, so.
The staff and the design team have been working really hard on this, so, good. Okay, we are to trustee comments, and we'll start today with John.
Thank the art committee people for working on this policy. It's amazing. It's a lot of work. And I welcome this evaluation of the director. It's fun working with good people. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also just wanted to thank Mary Jo for all the hard work that she does to try to keep up with the budget and all the stuff going on with the construction, so I really appreciate her efforts and very dedicated to policy and these actions. Good job.
Michelle.
Just want to say thank you. Thanks to everyone for all the work everybody is doing. Thanks.
And you too, Miss Secretary.
I end up saying the same thing everybody else says. No comment. 'Cause that's what I was gonna say, everything you guys just said. So ditto, I guess.
So for whatever you did, whenever you did it, thank you.
Well, this is an appropriate
Yes.
theme for the Thanksgiving meeting. And,
I'm thankful that you're all here.
I just wanted to commend Mary Jo for her outstanding commitment, and I'm pretty excited about the extra hour. I think that's gonna help a lot of people in the community. And also wanted to wish everybody a safe, happy holiday, because I know we won't meet again until after the holiday.
Thank you. So now it's chair comments, and as I said, that is it. Our theme tonight does fit with the Thanksgiving holiday. And Ashley John articulated everything I wanted to say, so. Plus, say, go green! The MSU Spartans, hopefully they're beating the Duke Blue Devils as we speak. So John,
Madam Chair, I make a motion, meeting be adjourned.
goody, we're out of here before the staff is.
Who seconded it?
I did,
Okay.
seconded.
Yeah.